Welcome to the Entrepreneurial CEO Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind building and scaling a business. Each episode, we sit down with CEOs, founders, and leaders to uncover hard-won lessons in leadership, systems, and team building. Listen in each week to learn directly from real business leaders who have been in your shoes, had success, made the mistakes, and all of the messiness that comes with building a business. If you're ready to learn from real-world leaders and gain insights you can apply today, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today's guest is Ron Regenstreif, the co-founder and co-chairman of Regency Supply, a family-owned national lighting and electrical distributor with over 40 years of experience. Under Ron's leadership, Regency has grown into a recognized leader in the lighting industry, offering services such as lighting design, supply, construction services, retrofits, and maintenance. Beyond Ron's many professional achievements, he's deeply committed to serving those in need worldwide, having traveled extensively to countries like China, Thailand, Israel, and many others. He also serves on the board for organizations including Q4 Impact, Joni and Friends, His Hands on Africa, and Chosen People Ministries. Today, we're very fortunate to have Ron join us to share his experiences and discuss the journey of scaling a successful business while maintaining a people-centered company culture. So Ron, thank you so much for joining us. I really look forward to this conversation.
Well, great to be able to do this with you.
All right, well, let's dive in. So Ron, Regency has been a family business for over 40 years. When you started the company, what was your vision for it and how has that evolved over time?
Yeah, I was not an educated man. And so by the time I started Regency, I was just over 28 years old. I had left college in the middle. I was swept up in the world of rock and roll in the hippie times of the 60s. So there wasn't a lot of planning or forethought or like what does it take to create a successful company. Didn't really have set or established business values. Those things kind of evolved as it came. And certainly in those early days, given that I didn't have a ton of confidence or look at myself as having this great goal of being a successful business person, I didn't have a lot of planning that took place. And so by the time we started our company in 1981, I had values that were more personal values. And the way I was living my life was that I always saw that my personal life had to be my whole life. Yeah. I didn't have a separate rule for when I was home, another rule for when you're at work, another rule when you're somewhere else. Life was to be lived from my perspective as the goal of pleasing God with everything that I did. It didn't matter whether I was on the basketball court or was in a business meeting or was rolling around on the floor with my kids. So not a lot of forethought.
I mean, Ed, I think that's important because then you can be authentic if you're not trying to be different at work versus at home, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of things when I look back now, and I'm going to write a book about my story in the next year or two, God willing, and you look back and you recognize that there were certain things true about yourself when you were in the early stages. And one of the things that stands out to me is that I didn't really have a drive to make money. I didn't have plans. I want to live in a certain house, or I want to drive a certain car. I want my bank account to be a certain size. My main values were I wanted to be a great follower of the Lord, number one. I wanted to love my wife, and I wanted to be a great dad. And those three things were what motivated me. And so I didn't I wasn't tempted to make sacrifices that would affect those three principles that were just so obvious to me. I came from somewhat of a wealthy family. I wouldn't call it wealthy, but middle class, upper middle class. And my parents were business people, and they were very focused on business.
Mm,
And that was their 90% of their effort was about making money. And I saw what that did, and it really just had no appeal at all for me. And I think that's kind of an important value is to, what are you really driving after? Because if you're driving after money or some form of success, then your behaviors are maybe going to neglect other parts of your life that are
sure,
more important. So,
sure. That's really interesting. That so your earlier experiences with your family absolutely shaped it, yet you still chose to be an entrepreneur and start your own business.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a great story that I tell often, and it took place about 15 years, 20 years after we saw our company, and we had already on the road to success, had become way bigger than we had ever imagined or dreamed of being. And actually, there's two stories. One story is at the early stage, this guy took us out to breakfast, and he said to me at breakfast, Ron, if you can't generate $100,000 a month in sales, you're never going to make it. And we came out of that breakfast and so depressed and like, how are we ever going to get to the point where we could generate $100,000 a month of sales and then of course years later doing millions of dollars a month in sales. But I've never forgotten that feeling of thinking like this is never going to happen. But 10, 20 years later, I'm in the car with a consultant that we had hired who was very, very smart. He was driving me to make a presentation at Disney World, trying to win the Disney World lighting business. And a small magazine, business magazine, had asked to do a story on our company. And so the guy was interviewing me on the phone and getting ready to write this article. And so he asks me this question. He said, Ron, what's your definition of success? And no one had ever asked me that question before. And so I repeated the question to give myself some time to develop an answer. And I said, my definition of success is taking advantage of the opportunities that we have without neglecting our priorities. And so continue to talk, hung up the phone, and the consultant turns to me and says, do you know what you just said? And I went, we just talked a half hour. What do you mean? And he repeated what I said about my definition of success. And so I said, wow, that's pretty profound, isn't it? And I think what it was, it came out of who I was and what I really believed. And it so captured kind of my life philosophy that it stuck. And
Yeah.
I've been telling that story for years and years and years. And that to me is such a critical element of life, is understanding what are the most important things and making sure that you're not sacrificing something important for something that's not as important.
That is really, I love that. And it takes time. You have to pause to reflect on that to really determine what really truly is important, right? And what shouldn't be sacrificed. And thinking of myself, sometimes you neglect to do that, to really pause and think through those things.
Yeah, busyness can make it hard to make decisions that are important, that you got to take time. You got to try to define these things for yourself. We're
Yeah.
too emotional. The opportunities or the desires that come in front of us are powerful. And if we're not solid in what we really believe, then we can make some pretty good sized mistakes.
Yes, that's true. And I don't know if it was Steve Jobs or somebody else who said that one of the most important things is saying no. You have to know what to say no to. And so being able to tie it back to those priorities and know what to say no to, it could be powerful and important. Hmm. So I'd love to understand more. You know, you ran the company for 35 years and then transitioned to leadership. Um, was it hard to take a step back? And how did you prepare your sons and the next generation to take over?
You know, my dad wasn't around much for my life. I was at a boarding school for 6 years from junior high to high school, time I was 12 years old and until I went to college. And so I always, for some reason, knew that I wasn't going to do that. I learned from what I didn't have to know what I wanted to have. And, and that's, I wanted to be a really good father. And so spent a lot of time with my boys, coached baseball, coached basketball, didn't miss games, even when the business was flourishing. At the end of their high school, three sons, a guy did an article on our family, and I once calculated I had watched 1,500 games. And I really don't know that I missed more than about 10 between all three sons playing 2, 3 sports each. And that was a priority to me. And I recognized that and I lived by it. And I said, no, this is more important than an extra couple of dollars from a new account, a new this, a new that. I probably might have went a little bit overboard, frankly, Andrew, but my heart was right.
Yeah.
And I believe I was rewarded for that. And so I have three pretty amazing sons, really, really amazing. And they've been here since they were out of college. One left in the middle of college to come work here. And they've been here now, 20, 30 years. One of them, listen, don't tell anyone, but my oldest son just turned 50. Okay.
50. All
Yeah.
right. Milestone.
Yeah. So the boys have been in it. Even before they came to work here, they'd come in on the weekends and work in the warehouse and do odd jobs and open the mail with me. And I was always, in fact, my sons knew what I earned when they were like 10 years old.
Mm.
I taught them about money. I taught them about the decisions we need to make and values and things like that. And I think that's been critical in for them being the success that they are.
And did they want to join the family business?
I threatened them that they didn't.
It's interesting. I've met just this past week two founder CEOs where they have very successful business in the home service businesses, and their sons just have no interest. And I find that so fascinating.
I think the oldest and the youngest kind of knew from the time they were really small. The middle son didn't think he was going to be in the business and traveled and did a bunch of missions trips and then one day just came to this revelation that this having the success of a business gives you so much opportunity to make a difference in the world. And we've used that success to build orphanages, to just support all kinds of efforts going around in different countries around the world, and including our employees and our vendors, inviting them to participate in the things that we were doing. And so
it's amazing.
Yeah, that is such a joy. To this day, sometimes I'll just think to myself, this is so much fun. I can hear of a need or someone that has a great idea and I can write a check. It's like, it's what's better than that? I mean,
you're in a position to make a difference.
It's
right?
Really a privilege, a real privilege.
So throughout the years, You guys have built Regency into a large national player. If I'm sure there have been many, I would imagine. But what are some of can you think of any like big challenges that came as you were trying to scale the business? Because you guys have obviously grown from, I always think about like going from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 1,000. They're very different. So as you were scaling, any particular challenge that you can recall, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, we had one or two major things. We had a lawsuit we were involved in that someone named us in a very large suit, and that was very stressful. And thankfully, it turned out that we didn't have to pay anything. And there were lots of, I don't say major crises. I think the hardest part is that both my business partner and myself have had a heart for people.
Mm.
And when you care about people and your company grows to, two, three, 400 people, there's a lot of challenges that come.
Yes.
And I remember sometimes feeling like I should answer the phone. Hello, this is Ron. I'm sorry. How may I help you? You know, because so many things happen that you wish could have been done better. And so that was always hard to know that you have to put the time in with people. And when you have that many people and they're in the middle of crises, we made ourselves available, and at times would have to spend hours coaching someone through family drama and
Yeah.
personal challenges and losses. And at times you would say, I don't have time to work on the business because I'm so involved in people's life. But we realized that that is the business, that
Mm.
that part of the business was wanting to be people who cared and who
Okay.
encouraged others and helped others navigate life challenging circumstances. And that was more important to us than how much money we took home at the end of the year. Way more important. And so that created um, a lot of struggle, a lot of challenge, and I think I've said a couple times that the size that you get is oftentimes dependent on how much stress you can put up with.
Hmm.
How much difficulty can you manage? If you can only manage a small amount of difficulty, chances are you're going to have a small company because business is hard. Life is hard. Relationships are.
Absolutely. And some people, yeah, that's right. That's right. Some people are happy with a small lifestyle business, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Whereas other people really are hungry for that scale. But yeah, it comes with a lot of stress. But it sounds like you guys are very intentional about the culture you want to build and the type of company you want to operate. And you're willing to, but you were able to maintain both that amazing culture and caring about your employees and helping them. But also, you built Regency into a very successful business.
Yeah, I would say others probably could have taken it further in terms of the size, but at what price would they have paid to have made the decisions to perhaps not pay as much attention to the relationships and the personal interaction between your staff and yourself?
Yeah.
About the middle of our 40-year journey, I was in my room at home and just working on things. I love to write. I kept journal for years and years and years. And I sat there and I tried to come up with how could I capture kind of our business philosophy? What would be a way to kind of summarize our belief or our philosophy of business? And I came up with an acronym that also just wound up sticking and is still being used at Regency today. And the acronym is RISE, RISE, and it stands for relationship, I stands for integrity, S stands for service, and E stands for expertise.
Mm.
And so making those four things the priority of your efforts in business, in my mind, is the recipe for success. And the first one, the R of relationship, I would say the R and the I, the first two letters, are perhaps the most important of those four, although the other two are as important are important as well. But who doesn't want to be around someone who's a quality individual? Do you want your auto mechanic to have integrity or not?
Mhm.
You want to go to an honest dentist or a dishonest dentist? Do you want to be able to trust the person that comes to your home to fix something? Or do you want to be suspicious of their character? That's an easy question to answer. And so focusing on relationship, focusing on integrity, and then adding service and expertise, it's a foolproof recipe for
Yeah,
success.
that is great. I love that they're still using it today. So that is a great, I'm going to hop ahead to a question I wanted to ask you
Okay?
because it's so important. Hiring and retaining talent. It's become even harder now, I think, in 2025. And if you layer on those values that are important to Regency, you know, how did you navigate building a strong team that would fit into your culture? Like what worked for you among the years?
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with the well-known business book Good to Great.
Mm-hmm.
That talks a lot about hiring and uses the three C's: character, competence, and chemistry. I think are the three, if my memory serves me well. And character is the most important. The competence part you can teach. Someone can come in with
Yeah.
no experience, know nothing about the job, and they can learn. But if you're starting with flawed character or chemistry that doesn't fit, that's much more difficult to teach. So we would always be very personal as legally as we could do that, and try to get to know the person. Like, who are you
Yeah.
sitting across from me? What's the real you? And I want to hear not only about your strengths, but I want to know what are the difficult things for you. What doesn't come naturally for you? And if you don't tell me now, I'm going to find out,
Right, right.
a couple weeks after we hire you. So, as nice of a guy as I am, and I'm an extremely nice guy, if you're not a right fit, we're going to let you go. So let's figure that out before we start, because no one wins if you get hired for a month and then you get terminated. And
Yeah.
so we try to have as intimate of a conversation, as a realistic of a conversation as we possibly can in the interview, um, time.
I imagine that may have been a surprise for some folks getting some of those hard questions they're not used to at other places, right?
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, and oftentimes set people at ease, and especially when you begin by saying, you're sitting in the lobby, and we had like the Michael Jordan of receptionists. Like, this gal was the most positive, warm, kind. And so someone would be sitting in the lobby and they'd just like, wow, this place must be amazing. And so oftentimes I'd say, so what do you think you see?
Mm.
And they would tell me. And so I would say, well, that's nice, but let me now tell you what's behind the curtain. Here's what we don't do so well at.
Mm.
Here are the parts of working here that are difficult, and get all that out on the table. So I'm sharing my dirty laundry with you. I want to
Yeah.
see yours as well. And then let's see if it's a fit.
That's honest and transparent.
Yeah.
So, staying on the topic of people, Regency, values culture. How did you approach the continued development and leveling people up as they move? Maybe they move up in the organization or laterally. How did you guys approach that?
So it was always a question that we would talk about and think about. It's like, why should someone work for me? So come to work for Regency so Ron and his family can get wealthy. Like, that wouldn't motivate me. There has to be something in it for the employee that's more than just a paycheck.
Mhm.
And so that's what building the culture and inviting people to say, look, we're going to take a significant amount of our profits and we're going to invest them in doing things around the world that are incredibly meaningful. And we want you to partner with us. We want you to, it's not Ron and Mike's mission, it's all of our missions. It's come with us, be a part of it, help us build this success so that not only can we take care of the needs of our families and the folks that work here, but let's slice off a chunk to be able investing in people who really have a difficult challenge. I don't know if you've ever been to Haiti,
No.
but it's quite the place. And I I love just taking groups of 10, 15, 20 at a time to Haiti and watching them encounter
Yeah.
how a big chunk of the world actually lives.
Right.
And so there was a mission that came alongside of the paycheck. That yes, we're selling lighting and we're adding customers and we're taking that success and we're really putting it to good use, not only around the world but with each other. That nobody can tell me that they were in my office and they felt disrespected by me. Let me restate that. There probably are a few people who might have felt that, but the evidence would be very, very small.
Mm.
And that was such an important thing. No matter how poorly someone performed, we always wanted to make the end respectful
Sure.
as we possibly could, and did our best at doing that. Not always entirely successful at it, but it was a big priority for us.
We recently just did an episode with Mike, our CEO, and we were talking about this particular topic, and his point was you let the standard be the villain, right? Like if I was underperforming, you wouldn't be attacking me. It's just, hey, this is the standard we hold our people to. This is what we're trying to accomplish as an organization. This doesn't appear to be working out. It's not personal. It's just the way it is. And I think that's important. Sometimes people make it personal when it's not. So on that topic, as you guys are growing this business, you have to have those hard conversations. You have to hold people accountable and make sure the company and the teams are performing. How did you guys do that? Did you have certain systems you used? What did you use for like goals and accountability?
I mean, we did this typical standard things that most companies do with annual reviews and things like that. But I think the overall practice is making sure the relationship is current. And with hundreds of employees, it's pretty impossible to do that excellently with every single situation. And so we weren't perfect at it. And our biggest failures came when we neglected to do the kind of job that we really needed to have done. And then that can result in hurt feelings and not being proud of the way something were to take place. And I've had to apologize to people and say, you have a right to be disappointed. We really should have done a better job at managing our expectations and making sure you understood that, you weren't doing what we were asking you to do.
Mm.
We did that the vast majority of the time, but we missed at times too. And that was hard. It's hard to make a mistake and to realize that you created some hurt in someone. And the only thing you can do then is own it and apologize for your part and say, I wish I could have done this better. And I hope you'll, forgive me. I'm human. I'm a CEO. I'm successful, and I do a lot of things well, but nobody's perfect. And I think even being able to say that as a CEO and standing in front of your company and making sure they understood that I wasn't perfect and and inviting them to say, if you see something, please come into my office and tell me. I don't care if you got hired 10 days ago and you're, the low man on the totem pole. I'm going to listen to what you're saying and evaluate whether you've seen something that I've missed.
Yeah,
And so I think our staff appreciated that during
absolutely.
our meetings, I would always say to them, look, at this meeting, you can count on hearing the truth. If we're doing well, I'm going to tell you we're doing well. And if we're not doing so well, you're going to hear we're not doing so well. And you're going to hear what's going on. And so
Mm.
I think we created a pretty good atmosphere of there being trust, and people
Yeah,
just appreciate that.
yeah. Yeah, trust, transparency, um, humble humility, right? Being a humble leader, servant leader, I think is valuable, and people respond to that.
It's like you
Um,
said when we first came on, I think before we went on air, uh, it's basic. These are basic life principles that apply in marriage, that apply with raising your kids, and it's the same principles that apply in business as well.
well, it is, but I think it's we were having this discussion with somebody else. I think it's sometimes it's hard for business leaders or CEOs. They think they need to have all the answers. They think they need to show their team so the team doesn't get nervous. Like, no, the leader knows what's going to happen. I have all the answers, and I'm not wrong. Well, nobody's right all the time. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to not own up to it. So I think that, sometimes maybe it's an insecurity where people think they can't show that weakness to their team. But if you don't, I think that's a mistake.
It's a bad model because if
Yeah.
if the leader isn't willing to own his mistakes, then what happens when the staff makes a mistake? Then the model is, well, I better cover it up. I
Mm,
better not tell anyone. I better make an excuse. I better blame someone else because I don't want to own that I actually made a mistake because
yeah.
I'm working for some person who's perfect and
That's a great point. That's a great point.
so
Leading by example, right? So at Regency, do you guys like, how do you turn thinking through, how you guys have grown so much? How do you turn ideas into action? Like, execution is so important, especially now. I always think nowadays ideas are kind of cheap, especially with AI and ChatGPT. You could plug in a prompt and have a million ideas in 5 minutes, but it's the execution that really matters. So you've obviously done well with execution over the years. You've built out a great company, an amazing culture. How do you turn those ideas into actual implementation and action?
well, you may not have heard an answer to that question that you're going to hear from me, but I I'm a positive guy, but I'm also a skeptic.
Mm,
And the way my brain works is it's very mathematical. So you give me an idea and I got my pencil out and I've got a piece of paper and I'm doing the addition and the subtraction. And if it doesn't make sense to me, then I'm going to say, yeah, it's an idea, but there are a lot of ideas that you can't build a business around.
Mhm.
The idea has to be able to be turned into a profitable idea. And so that oftentimes is a math question. In 2 plus 2, has to have equal 4. And if it doesn't add up, if you're trying to make something that's very expensive to make and you don't have a obvious way of marketing it and successfully selling it, it could be the greatest product in the world,
Right.
but you're probably not going to be able to start a business around
Yeah.
it. So I think you have to be suspicious and skeptical and willing to listen and open to obviously good ideas, but you have to realize most ideas are not good ideas and say no to the ones that are like, yeah, not really for us.
Mm. Okay. Looking to the future,
Mm.
what is next? What's next for Regency? What are the big opportunities or challenges that you guys see on the horizon that you're looking towards?
Yeah, this has been, I retired at the best time, right before COVID, right in the lighting industry, soon after the introduction of electronics and the LED phenomena. And so I've turned it over to my sons, and they've got their hands full. And but we look at the electrical world as where the future is for us, and we're making choices and decisions to try to position ourselves to just do the same thing we've always done, and be the kinds of people that are trustworthy, be the kinds of people that have character and honesty, know what we're doing, and just service the heck out of people. You
Mhm.
know, it's I use this a lot. I love going to a restaurant where the server is really good at what they do.
Mhm.
And it just like, I don't really care that much about the food. I'm so enamored by the person taking such good care of me that oftentimes, that'll cause me to go back.
Absolutely. Makes all the difference in the world.
And it's like that whether you're getting your car fixed. I use the same mechanic for 25, 30, I think it's probably 35 years now, and they're not cheap. They just, but they're great guys. They take great care of me. I trust them, and yeah, they need to make money. I don't mind writing the check
Right. Right.
because they're great to do business with. And that's the way I feel about my dentist. That's the way I want to feel about my doctors. It's the way the plumber should be, my insurance guy, whoever it is, whatever I'm doing, whatever kind of business I'm doing, the character piece is so big to me.
Hmm. Okay. Well, Ron, I have two more questions for you. Looking back, can you think of a lesson you learned the hard way or some leadership mistake? Like if you go back and do something differently, anything you can think of? I like to, when we do these episodes and talk to entrepreneurs, you know, I think about it like if I was going to walk across a field of landmines and somebody had already done that and stepped on those landmines, I want him to walk with me and show me, hey, don't step there, don't step there. So we like to ask entrepreneurs as they were building their successful businesses, what are those landmines they stepped on that other people shouldn't?
Yeah, it's a hard question for me to answer because I feel so privileged to have become what I became. I feel so much that I've gotten so much more than I deserved, and it's been such a gift, this success story that I've lived in. So there aren't any real obvious answers. A few little things I can think of is I wish I would have invested more in personal coaching
Mm.
and availed myself to spend the money to participate in either one-on-one uh, coaching or business groups. We did, in towards the latter half of our career, but in the beginning, uh, we were growing, weren't that successful. We're frugal, didn't want to spend money. And so I think we could have done better on the educational side of filling some gaps.
Yeah.
We tried to make up for it by being, I read 30 to 40 books a year. And so I love reading business books and I love reading a bunch of different kinds of books, but so much to learn and to always want to continue to improve. So that's probably one area.
How do you find time to attend 1,500 sports games, run a successful business, and read 40 books a year? That's a lot of time. That's a
Yeah,
lot of
well,
time.
I wasn't reading 30 to 40 books a year when my kids were young.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was probably started. It's an interesting thing for me to think through. I actually keep track of all the books that I read, and
Mm.
I have a list, and it's I don't know what the number is, up to 500 since I started keeping track, and so it's really after the kids grew up. I think there are seasons of our lives. There's seasons of your business that
Hmm.
certain things when business is tight and profits are small, there are some things you shouldn't do or can't do. And then when you have some good years, it's a great time to invest and be able to do things that at other times you can't do. So
I love thinking about it. I totally agree. I love thinking about it that way, that there's seasons and this is going to change, right?
you,
For better or worse, it's going to change.
you've got to be willing to tighten your belt when things
Mm.
get hard. And boy, at COVID, I was so proud of my sons for navigating through the difficulty of seeing in one year an over 30% reduction in revenue.
Wow.
And they jumped on it and just did a phenomenal job navigating. We couldn't help what was going on around us, and you've got to adjust and adapt. And it means sometimes sacrificing and being willing to say, no, I'm not going out to those lunches and I'm not going to participate in that, you know, pleasurable golf tournament. We can't afford it this year. I
Yeah.
hope I'll do it next year or in the
Right.
years to come. But
Well, kudos to them for that. I mean, COVID was hard on everybody. 30% reduction must have been really, really hard.
yeah.
All right. One last question for you, Ron. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice about running the business, starting the business, what would it be?
Well, I'll tell you one secret to my success. I have a phenomenal business partner.
Okay.
And we grew up as friends. We met when I was 15, he was 16. And when it came time for us to go into business together, both sets of parents advised against it and said, it'll ruin your friendship. And here we are, years and years and years later. We still talk 3-4 days a week, and my closest friend in the world.
That's amazing.
I was more the face of the company, and I would say I was more the leader of the company, but he was the leader of us, of me and him. And the character piece, the integrity piece is my business partner is the top of the food chain. And so having that kind of relationship where there's absolute trust, where there's respect, where you are able to process through and make just agree even when you disagree, compromise on the times where you maybe see things differently. Boy, has that been! I couldn't have done what I've done without him. There's no question about it. And I think he would say the same thing about me. But so having someone to do this with is very hard, but very worth it if you can succeed at it.
You're very fortunate to have found the right partner. I mean, I know I used to joke with my former business partner. I joked that I would see him more than my wife and family. I mean, we were just together so much. And so you have to have that great relationship and understand how to work with each other. And it sounds like you guys did, which is Amazing.
And that's the start. That's the top line. If the two of us aren't practicing relationship integrity, honesty, humility, how can you expect to create an organization if the leadership is out of sync? You, the organization is definitely going to be out of sync. So
Yeah.
especially those relationships at the top of the chain have to be examples of all of those things.
You're absolutely correct. That alignment starting from the top. Well, Ron, this has been really, really great. I appreciate you spending the time with us. Before we wrap up, where can people go to learn more about Regency or connect with you directly or learn about all the amazing things you're doing?
Yeah, Regency, pull up the website anytime you have questions about the company. And personally, I started my own nonprofit called Q4 Impact, and you can find it also on the website. Have a podcast that we've recorded over 100 sessions in the last 2 years, and just talk about life issues, talk about even coming to the second half or what we call the fourth quarter of your life. How do you prepare for that? How do you live in it? And then how do you look at what's coming down the pike? And I can be reached on that website and be glad to start any kind of friendship or relationship. Love meeting people, love being a part of folks trying to do good things. So.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll drop links to those in the comments so people can find your nonprofit and everything else and Regency. Ron, thank you again so much for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next time.